Okay, great. Yes, welcome everyone. So I just wanted to actually review kind of our timeline again and see how many meetings that we had until our um so August 1st, I think was the timeline, is that right?
Yeah, we should get that into TC54 by August 1st.
Okay.
That way we can present it to the Exicom by September,
Yeah.
for vote by the GA in December.
Okay, so we've got 4 months. Okay, so we've got about like 9 meetings, I think, before August, if my math is correct, for August 1st.
It's too late in the day. I can't do math right now.
I could be off by 1 or 2, but I think it's about 9. So, okay, just to keep that in mind, as we're going through things, kind of the end goal of August 1st, having something ready to present to the TC54 review. Um,
It's,
and
it's
and for
10
this,
weeks.
is it 10 meetings?
Well, if we have, if you don't take your vacation, yes,
Okay.
10 or 11, depending on.
Okay. Perfect. And I assume we'll take a vacation or something in there too. Um, So, agenda items for me, I actually did not do this, so I will have to defer this to the next meeting. Um, then the main thing that I wanted to talk about was extended support and figuring out how we can support that in the schema. And then maybe talk about how we can integrate with the hackathon, the upcoming hackathon. But otherwise, that's it for me for agenda items. Anyone else have anything that you think we should talk about this meeting?
No,
Okay.
I just have an update on some of the documentation stuff.
Okay.
So the EC markup pull request from Aki was finally merged. Unfortunately, I upgraded to it. It's like version 21 of EC markup. And unfortunately, I can't get the documentation to build when using that version. So something broke between 20 and 21. I'm trying to figure it out with Aki. But right now, I mean, that's just for the printable PDF stuff. So that's a blocker for August. And so that needs to be fixed before August. But I think the group needs to think about like how we can start populating some of the content in there like now while we're kind of fleshing out some of the schema as well. And this could be done asynchronously.
Okay. So let's go. Let's go over there and see where that's at again. So that's in the
It's in the like there's like an XXX because it's a placeholder for the Ekman number.
yes, this one right
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Okay. So we can kind of start filling things in. And can you tell us a
Spec.
little
Yeah.
about how the repo works, and what we need to do here?
Yeah, it's actually very simple. EC markup is an extension to HTML5. They do have very, very specific markup language. So think of like their own tags, for example.
Mhm.
And you basically author the spec.html. And so if you scroll down, right, the majority of this is going to be basically specification. So
Mhm.
you'll see your own like different types of tags. These tags are all like these elements are documented in the EC markup syntax. But you know, we can start going in here and filling out like some things like why does this exist, right? Why do we need a standard for this? And all the other background information that you would have in a specification document like this. So that can be done now.
Mhm.
Um, the the rest of the repo, basically, I don't even need the package.json. I put it in there because it's, it simplifies things. But EC markup is basically a command line tool. And, right now I'm using 19.1.0, but 20.0 works fine. 21 breaks. But basically, all it does is it runs this command line tool, and it generates both the online documentation as well as the PDF.
Hmm,
So it's pretty cool.
that's great.
Yeah. But yeah, we need to think about how we're going to go in there and start populating the information.
Okay. So yeah, all the kind of boilerplate informational stuff can be populated now.
Yeah, exactly. And Jordan, because he's not here, he is the expert, however. So he knows EC markup very well.
Mhm.
I have to refer to the docs, but we do have an expert on
Oh,
this TG that knows it very well. So
I thought you were going to say he was going to volunteer to write all the
I would love to volunteer him.
that would be great. If anyone else wants to volunteer, that'd be great too, but I'm also happy to do it. So yeah. Um, great.
That's all I had.
Okay, thank you. Um, anything else for the agenda? Um, Salve or Mark? Good? Okay, perfect.
I'm cool.
Awesome. So I should go through these comments too, but let's check out the specification here. Yeah, so going back to the specification, I really wanted to think about how we can support extended support from just from like I think we agreed last meeting from like a first party perspective. Like I am a software manufacturer and I want to say that I offer these different support tiers for this piece of software. I think we agreed last meeting that the third party support where it might be someone offering support for another service is kind of like out of scope. And so that's yeah, that's what I would like to think about here.
So the end of guaranteed support is like the first step. So end of guaranteed support is that thing where you just announce that I'm not going to support this thing anymore unless you pay me a lot more money, and I'll think about it.
Yeah.
And then you ultimately get to that end of support. So what are we saying with extended support then? Where is that piece in the middle, or is that something separate?
Sorry. So so yeah, we do have this end of support field, but it's not attached to not attached to like a life cycle. Maybe I can show you actually um uh, if I can go to the end of life repo. I kind of I kind of recommended a spec in the discussions over here, which talks about extended support. Yeah, here we go. And maybe it's useful to kind of reference the schema is different because we're doing different things, but just kind of to get an idea. So in this schema, the one that I created before, we kind of have, we have an entity and we have things that identify it, right? And then we have support levels. And the level is 0 indexed. And then it has an EOL field associated with it. So these are the dates when each of these support levels goes end of life. And so this is common, right, for manufacturers to have these different levels of support. Usually the support level is like basic support, and maybe they don't offer anything else, and then they have an extended support, and there's like 2 levels. But the number of levels can technically be somewhat arbitrary. Like they could have 4 levels of extended support, right, or something like that. And so what I'm saying is that, and the names as well of the support levels is something to keep in mind. So Red Hat, for example, they might call their extended support level, the first extended support level, extended update support. And then the level after that, enhanced extended update support, right? So the names of the levels will also change from manufacturer to manufacturer. So I think like naming it a specific level of support past the base level of support is, I don't know, it's like you almost need to have some way of conveying what level of support it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. I get it.
yeah.
Yeah. It's almost like different tangents on the same, from the same timeline. You got multiple tangents and each one's kind of has a different end
Mhm.
time. Yeah. Okay. All right. That
So
makes a lot of sense.
it's like the event general availability, there's no modifier, let's say, for the support level, because that's something that affects all levels. But at the end of support type, potentially has some sort of modifier here that's like level, I don't know, 0. And then there would be potentially, you know, maybe I can like modify this, but like maybe instead of events, there's like a support object, and we have indexed support levels for the component.
Yeah.
The other thing, though, this is gonna be an edge case too, is that support levels can change over time for different products, right? So, um, I think Red Hat compressed their support levels recently, and they had 3 levels of extended support, and they compressed it into 2 levels or
Mhm.
and like that, and they changed the name of it.
Well,
And so
then it sounds like so right now we've got the events array. It sounds like we need something at that same level, right?
Mhm.
To communicate support. That way we could theoretically communicate like the legacy support that
Mhm.
was offered previously, but we could also communicate the current support levels,
Mhm.
right? And be able to tie them all to all of the events.
Yeah, yeah. So now the that's a good point. That's a good point. There's one extra case that we have to consider, which is from the perspective of client software using the CLE, you have to consider how you would be able to set a configuration that says for these components or for these manufacturers, I have extended support levels, this for these pieces of software.
Hmm. That sounds like, yeah, I mean, so when we're talking about distribution methods,
Yeah.
right? Like it was proposed .well-known /CLE, for example. Well, if you go to that URL, it should be just basic general information.
Mhm.
But in the context of something like the Transparency Exchange API, it should be personalized information.
Right.
So how do we communicate the difference?
Hmm. What do you mean by that personalized information?
Well, I mean, the end of support is this date, but for you, because you are special, it's this date over here.
Hmm. Specifically in T, it's like that.
No, but theoretically, because
Oh,
you have to authenticate, you
interesting.
have to get authorized to use the API.
Hmm.
Because of that, the implementations will know who you are and what you've licensed.
Hmm.
And when you perform a query, theoretically, we
Hmm.
could supply both the general information as well as that more personalized information that is relevant to that particular requester.
Interesting. That is interesting. I didn't know that T was considering authentication.
Yeah, yeah, it's a big part of it. So all of the endpoints basically have options. It's not a requirement, but have options for both authentication and authorization.
Really?
Yes. Yes. So it is not just here's my API, have at it, everybody.
Yeah.
Although if you are in open source projects and you have no support, that is certainly the preferred method of configuration, I would assume.
Hmm.
But if you're, a commercial vendor, right, you're going to want authentication and authorization because of the sensitivity of some of the artifacts that are going to be in there. For
Hmm.
example, right? For example, for certain kinds of customers, I might have access to, the general, SBOM, and on maybe FedRAMP customers or something else, I might have a CBOM and maybe, a couple of attestations for SSDF and maybe a few other things, right?
Yeah.
Uh, versus everybody else who doesn't have that information.
That is very interesting. I actually know, for example, Broadcom, I think you are required to sign up and log in to see their support levels for different products.
Yeah.
So, and then they have a whole list of you can do the drop downs and everything and select the products that you're using, but you have to log in and authenticate.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So that definitely happens across vendors where they will require authentication for support information.
So let's think about, I mean, because we've got these two very different distribution methods, right? We've got that well-known /CLE or whatever we come up with there, and maybe even the file format,
Hmm.
right? Put a file of a specific file name in a repository type of thing.
Hmm.
But we also have that API use case,
Hmm.
and we need to figure out how we can provide both
Hmm.
um, in a way where it's very easily understood. Well, it's like, again, here is my published information, but here
Hmm.
is where it deviates based on the requester.
Yeah. So sorry, I know what you're talking about. One last question about T actually. Is T going to be very like a lightweight client? Like it's like just for document storage kind of? There's not like
Initially, it's going to be primarily for document storage. However, there's no requirement that it be a document, right?
Mhm.
For example, you don't need to store an SBOM, right?
Right.
If you have SBOM data in your database and that's where you're storing it, well, you
Mhm.
could theoretically construct the SBOM on the fly and send it to the requester, right? There's no requirement that you have a document store.
Mhm.
Um, and I would imagine that would especially be the case for T because we don't really want these to be documents per se. We want these to be streams of event information from the product lifecycle, right? That's basically what we want. An
Mhm.
API is an ideal place for this. Um, but then you also have parts of the API like insights, which I'm currently working on, that insights and I've got I think I have a draft PR. Is it draft or is it just a regular? I don't know. Anyway, there is a PR in the T repo that adds both static and dynamic ways to query based on a normalized model. So it will basically support CEL, so Common Expression Language, as a way to query, but it'll also so there's a static part which uses CEL, and there's also a dynamic part which uses natural language. So think AI, like behind the scenes on that API.
Hmm,
So it is truly like an API. I mean, we are trying to get away from files and make files irrelevant,
I see.
because at the end of the day, like SBOM formats and stuff like that, they shouldn't matter. What matters is the content.
Have you seen sorry, you just mentioned this natural language prompt. Have you seen model context servers, I think it's called?
I don't think so.
Um, this is a format for integrating external data with LLMs.
Okay,
I think Anthropic is working on this,
interesting. Okay,
but yeah, it's very interesting. If as an aside, you should
yeah,
definitely
I'll
look
check
at
it
it.
out.
Getting a lot of popularity. So
Yep.
um, okay, so sorry, tangent. Back to the T stuff. Where were we? Um, okay, so I think the original question was around the distribution methods, right? We have these two different distribution methods. We have T, we have potentially like someone just uploading things on GitHub.
Mhm.
You know, how do we square it? We have T where you could potentially know the user and know their support levels, right? Um, I think, I mean, I lean towards having like the document should be all you need, basically. Um, to be able to consume it and then use it programmatically in some way with a client. So, yeah, I don't know if that's what you're getting at, but like any type of business logic or anything like that within one of the distribution methods, I th I would prefer to keep it just in the document.
Yeah, agreed. No argument there. I mean, we
Okay.
need something that just validates with plain JSON schema, and that's it.
Yeah, yeah. Definitely. Um, so let me think here. So there's two problems, I guess. Is one is like, how do we add this data, this support level data into the schema and where? And then how do we consume it with the client effectively? Um, yeah. Any ideas off the top of your guys' heads around what it would look like?
Um, I would I would think about maybe having um a new property called definitions.
Mhm.
So you'd basically have events and definitions.
Right.
And definitions would basically be those reusable objects that you want to refer to from the events.
Hmm.
Um, and one of those types could be support levels. Um, I wish I had done that earlier with CycloneDX.
Yeah.
Um,
So let's-
so I have definitions down at the bottom here.
there we go.
Yeah, there you go. But Notice my description says a collection of reusable objects that are defined and may be used elsewhere in the BOM. That's basically what we want. Now, right now, CycloneDX only has that. In the future, everything is going to be basically definable there.
Right.
But that would be one way to do it. I mean, there's other ways.
Oh, so right now there's only one definition type.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Interesting.
Now, in the future version of CycloneDX, basically all reusable objects can be defined there. That's what we're going to be doing for CycloneDX 2.0.
Where is there some reusable objects that aren't defined there right now?
Pretty much all of them.
Oh, okay. I
Yeah.
see.
Like all your components, your licenses, your services.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. I like that.
So that would be one way to do it.
Yeah.
I guess another way would be to just have a high level thing called support levels, right?
Yep.
I mean, a less ideal approach would be just to inline everything, but that would reduce, or that would lead to a lot of duplication. I would imagine, right? Especially if you have like 100 products, your support things will probably be the same across most of those products. In terms of like the support levels, maybe not the expiration dates and stuff like that, but the levels themselves would be pretty much the same, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Is there any link or kind of crossover? This is aimed at Steve with the support for commercial licenses that was introduced into CycloneDX in the last 2 years. It's also now because SPDX copied. It's also in SPDX as well. But that you know, has all of the support for stuff like when does my when is my support paid through, etc., etc.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well, what I'm talking about is that you were talking about having things in the CLE kind of personalized for you. Well, surely the commercial licensing stuff in the BOM is personalized because
it is, yeah.
It references stuff like serial numbers and all of the other bits, which actually helps make sense of what we've got for me, the user, the person who's actually licensed this piece of software. I mean, is there any kind of crossover at all?
I mean, yeah, I guess that would be another way to do it. I mean, the way we chose to do it in Cyclone is just to use a different kind of what would it be? I'm not an English person in terms of like language, but you know, we chose licensing, like the fact that you have done something to be kind of the noun. So I guess that would be another way. You could do something like support levels, and then you could do something with support, and then a play on that, supporting, supported, around the fact that it's personalized information. Yeah, I think there's a few ways that you could potentially do this.
Yeah. The
But
other
I do
thing,
think the support levels probably need to be, I think the support levels probably need to be reusable objects because you're going to use them a lot, I think.
that is true. If we didn't use reusable objects, though, we wouldn't have to worry about versioning the support objects either.
That's
Because,
true.
yeah, because potentially you'd have to version the support levels.
Now, here's a question for you. Is the CLE only valid for a single product?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. Will there ever be a time when a single product is going to have differing support levels?
Yeah, like like basically the single product may have a different support levels past a certain version.
Right.
Like I have seen that edge case before. It's okay to say that it's an edge case that we don't want to support though. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Or something.
Yeah.
But like I haven't seen it too often, but yeah.
So, so this is for a given product,
Mhm.
and I'm thinking about maybe a product with like 100 releases. And let's just say, for the sake of argument, that the support, levels, they haven't changed in 5 years. So all 100 products have the same support levels. Um, Obviously, with the reusable objects, your file would be much smaller. Um, with the without reusable objects, you'd basically have 99 likely um, um, duplicated support levels, right?
Mhm.
Because they're 99 of those would eventually be end of support or whatever, and you'd have one that would still be in support. Um, but then
Yeah.
again, as you say, if things change, right? Um,
Yeah. I mean, I think I
Maybe,
would be fine to do it kind of like I don't know, non-versioned support levels initially for the sake of simplicity. I don't know. It's
mm,
always a struggle trying to balance simplicity and completeness,
yeah, right.
you know? But
Salve?
Yeah, I'm thinking a little bit. Uh, so we're talking about support levels during the lifetime of a product or a project,
Mhm.
and obviously those can change. Say, for example, what constitutes as support could be that the company offers on-site support as a service for pay, as a way to help, say, configure a product, for
Mhm.
example. Or it could be something, and this would be a new feature that could be a new type of support that could be introduced at the later stage sometime. So, and it could be removed. Sometimes they say, okay, we cannot make enough money from this type of support, so we're not offering it as a way to offer support anymore. So if I understand you correctly, then the levels of support and the types of support are connected to each release of a product, each version. Is that correct?
Um,
And not just the project as a whole, because a release could be once a year or once a week.
yeah, you can change the support level based on the different release. But this is an
Right.
edge case, like I said before. I've seen
Yeah.
it maybe once or twice
Yeah.
across like a whole bunch of different software. So it happens obviously more on the commercial side. Open source projects don't usually have like support levels, right?
Yeah, when it comes to support levels for open source stuff, I've been thinking a lot about that lately. And the most useful thing for CLE, I think, would be to offer a bunch of defaults of types of support that you can pick between. Not that you're forcing anybody, but to offer like a selection, like this you don't get support, or this is a casual support, or this project is done and only gets security application, the security fixes applied, or
Mhm.
there's a bunch more. In that sense, sensible defaults could at least help the projects themselves to use this file, this CLE file, to communicate what a given release
Yeah.
what people could expect for support, even if it's non-commercial.
So yeah, that's a good point. I I think that's interesting adding the support options for open source. The interesting thing is that usually there's no release like long running releases, right? So there's only some cases like with Bootstrap or something where they'll have version 2 and they'll have version 3 and then it's long running. It's mostly like at the framework level where you see the long running releases, right? Like Next.js, and they'll have version 14 and 15 and so in those cases they do have you know they do have some sort of support level, and usually the support level is just like we're only supporting the last 2 major releases or something, right? Like we're at 15 now, we're going to support 14 and 15, right? And so it's like so that's like a very common support strategy. Some people, for a lot of small open source projects, it'll be like, I'm just going to support the latest version. That's it. I'm not support, I have no release lines. I'm just going to push new versions, you know, as needed. That that's what I've seen as well. So
On this note, but very quickly, before Mark gets to say his word, would it make sense just from a usability perspective to make it easier to understand that this file we're talking about to make now, that it talks about support, and just call it support.json instead of CLE.json or something like that, or project-CLE. I think some of the examples were in the file. Just so we can drop it in a directory for an open source project, and it says support.json, and you have a spec for that says these are the things we can support, and for this version here that you just downloaded, these are the terms and the scope and for how long. Is this already thought of, or because if something like this could happen, this would go extremely well with the sustainability thing that I've been wrapping my head around, and would just put a load off my shoulders and say, oh yeah, okay, you guys will handle that side. I'm super happy. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting.
Maybe one thing to consider, Benji, and I don't know if this is a 1.0 thing or if this is like a 1.1 thing, but it was mentioned earlier that you know, a lot of projects only support like the latest release. Maybe another top level object is policies. And within policies, you could say, well, you know, regardless of what we release, we only support the latest.
Yes.
I don't know how, I don't know of a way to communicate that in a machine readable way without using English or something, but
so
that
there's
would be
like
a really good thing to have.
there's like a computed support basically. So you
right.
don't need the author to list all of the different dates that something went end of life necessarily. The only problem is that you need 2 things to make this work if you're consuming it. You need all the list of releases of something, and you need the kind of like the way that the support is handled. And then you can then compute the dates for releases of when they're end of life, right?
Right.
And so it's easy to do that with open source projects and things like that. For commercial projects, not so easy. A lot of times that the actual release numbers are not available. Like anything in the Microsoft ecosystem or things like that. But
there would be an opportunity with T though.
Yes. There would
Again,
be.
we don't want to confine ourselves to that, but when we are being used that way,
Yes.
Yeah.
That's why these are really like these are really different. They have different characteristics. These commercial
Mhm.
softwares versus softwares that are like more GitHub native, let's say. You know what I mean? And it's incredibly easy, I think, to design some sort of support policy just for open source projects. And then the hard part comes with the commercial side and with the hardware side. And that's like the long tail of edge cases and weird, interesting things, um, lack of
Yeah.
Semver and things like that, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
uh, and they're kind of somewhat different. And I don't know if it almost makes sense to design different schemas for different use cases here or something like that. I don't have an answer.
I think 99% of 95% of the stuff is probably common, would be my guess.
Okay.
Um, yeah. I can ask a few other folks to come to from commercial companies and kind of give their opinions on kind of what we've developed so far. I do see ranges and versions. Didn't we discussed that like last time, right? That's part of the PR that it still hasn't been worked on. Is that okay?
Yeah, we haven't merged it in yet, but
Yeah, okay.
uh,
Um,
Can I can I butt
yeah,
in?
sorry, Mark. Yeah.
sorry, Mark.
Testing the idea of the kind of top level thing where you'd express policy. And I think that that's actually got a lot of power as long as it's also able to cater for the fact that policy changes. So as an example, with SonarCube, they might have a sort of a policy which says our expected cadence of major releases is 18 months. And they've now dropped that. And that very much affects, what the supported versions are. And in fact, a company might say, we support the last two versions, but now we've actually pumping out a higher cadence of releases. We're now actually going to increase it to 3, just so that you don't go obsolete so darn quickly in terms of elapsed calendar time. You know what I'm trying to say? In other words, if you've got an 18-month cadence, you might know that you're going to be safe for 2 to 3 years. If they increase the cadence of releases, suddenly you've got to kind of keep fresh and being forced to upgrade and stay current, like every 6 months or so. And all
Yeah.
of that be expressed in a policy. But the other thing I'm interested in is when you've got the events, and the example here on the screen about sort of general availability and an effective date, when you've got a policy, can you actually have basically a predicted date so that it's the release hasn't been done yet, but the commercial company might effectively be able to give you predicted dates for future release so that you can then plan for it in an automated way. In other words, I've got a subscription which expires in June next year. And if I've got a predicted date of release, which is a month after, or a predicted date of release, which is a month before, I might kind of adjust my upgrade plans accordingly. But I'm doing it now, way, way in advance of that date.
Mhm. Yeah. So
That's interesting.
yeah. You definitely do. Companies definitely do put out end of support dates ahead of time, right? But yeah, that is interesting. Some will have have a support policy that's like on the next major release, then this piece of software is end of life or something like that. And we
Yeah.
expect to release this next major version in 3 months or something like that. So there is a speculative element here that helps you to plan. Usually, I think companies would put out kind of the date the end of support date based off of their expected release cycle, something like that. So you wouldn't necessarily compute it, but you would have it available, like you could put out the end of support date.
But how can you differentiate then between an effective date, which is a hard and fast date,
Mm-hmm.
and an expected date or a predicted date?
That's a good question. That is a good question. That's a good point, actually.
A couple other things maybe to consider for policy.
Yeah.
You know, maybe not dates, but maybe quarters, halves, you know, the cadence in which things are typically released. You know, like my company has 2 major versions a year. And then of course, you know, we would never communicate what the minors are because those are more quality based decisions.
Mhm.
But 2 major releases a year. We could theoretically communicate like if an organization has like Patch Tuesdays, for example. That might be interesting so that you know on a predictable, you know, timeline when you can expect patches. That might be interesting.
Interesting.
But, you know, while all these things are possible, and I think they're all valuable, I do think we need to figure out what we need to do first, architect it in a way where we can add some of these other things in the future.
Mhm. Yeah, totally. I think Mark, I think your effective versus kind of speculative date, that's very interesting. I'll have to think about it, but I know what you mean there. Effective is really a kind of a hard date. I don't have an answer right now, but that's gives me something to think about. Okay. So what else? Oh, we only have 5 minutes left.
Oh,
So I feel like we had a really good discussion. I don't have like any specific action items right now, I think, but maybe I'll kind of play around with the schema and next week I can kind of show some stuff off. What else? What else do we have to discuss? Potentially hackathon planning stuff. I don't know if it's worthwhile to do that right now, though.
Yeah. Also, I can provide an update on that. We've got we have been working with the foundation. We do have a room reserved. We are trying. It's still preliminary. We'll see what happens to make it like a co-sponsored event between OWASP and Ecma. But we do have a room. I think it's capable of like 20 people or so. It's going to be on the Wednesday before AppSec Global. You know, so I think the conference is what, Thursday, Friday, and the hackathon will be on that Wednesday. Neither one. The next one down. There you go.
might it help for like Benji and Oleg to have like a bit of a face-to-face sort of, one-to-one meeting via, Zoom or something, just to actually hash out sort of the blend that you might want to actually do in the hackathon?
Yeah. We're right now we're just making sure we have the space.
Yes.
We're also engaged with the OWASP designer to provide marketing and outreach material for social to promote the event. and it's going to be free for anyone to attend. You don't actually have to attend the OWASP conference, is the plan. Hopefully that doesn't change. But yeah, you won't actually have to be a conference attendee to attend the hackathon.
Interesting.
I just had a vision of like somebody flying in for that day and then not staying for the conference itself. Oh, I can't afford that.
Barcelona, I mean, you should just
Yeah.
stick around.
Yeah. But remember, I speak to somebody who's bitter and twisted about the fact that I can't get there at all.
Dude, I'm gonna be in the same continent as you for like the first time in what, 7 years, Mark? Whatever it's been.
Yeah.
And you can't do a little like plane hopper? Oh, I kid.
Maybe
Yeah.
what I need to do if you're going to be in Barcelona staying on for the Formula One, is I maybe sort of come in for a couple of days after the end of the conference and do a bit of sightseeing in Barcelona.
Yeah,
Really.
yeah. Yeah, I know. I need to talk to the wife about the week after the conference, which is the F1 stuff. Yeah.
You mean get a permission slip?
Yeah, something like that.
All right. Perfect. Well, yeah, thanks everyone for coming today. Lots of great discussion. And I got some work to do, and then we'll follow up in 2 weeks.
Cool. All right, very good.
All right.
Thanks all.
Right. Cheers, Mike.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye.